the OD ulti, I think, just wasn't good enough in that fight. It's one of those situations where OD has two choices. He can banish the Abaddon during his ulti and you just outlast the duration, and then you know where you have him, but then you've used your banish and then you don't have it. So I think spamming Arcane Orbs out on the Abaddon there's the right choice, but they didn't really manage to get the follow-through that they were looking for, and at the end of the day, I believe Troll did not have Blink in that fight. That was just what I was going to look for. Do they have any mobility items?
Definitely didn't. He just picked that up.
Yeah. They couldn't follow through. OD was in this awkward position, and they Omni Knight ulti also didn't save the Venge. She died really early. Speaking of death, that is a dead Nyx.
Oh. Oh, no. Oh, he's gonna get out. Oh, my. No. Q7. No, the stick one charges. Oh, no. No. Oh. If he got out of that one. He made them work for it, Ice. But it does indeed end up going down.
That was quite the moment. Wow. So close. Mid tower's gonna fall here.
Definitely something that you cannot underestimate. Even with losing that OD, losing the Aegis, the pushing power of TNC still very much at a strong point at this stage of the game.
Looks interested in swapping. They changed their minds. Gonna go here. Back off, play a bit slower again. They still...
Some good pickups coming out. Sam H has the Greaves complete for the next push up and group up from TNC. Medallion, of course, going to be the item of focus for Revenge this game. And yeah, after that first big item with the Midas into Dragon Lance, now looking to finish off the Hurricane Pike on Cuckoo. And we'll certainly save some of these tricky situations. We'll get to see the replay here. Vitais Ice's fancy footwork. The first spike Carapace doing wonders as he catches both with the Ignite
that
still proccing.
Such a fast reaction on the stun, by the way.
Instantly gets the perfect angle.
Oh, and the dust. Half a second on the dust.
And the one just comes off cooldown, but
Carapace.
Raven, with the blink that we talked about picking up, enables him to get the shutdown and the catch off.
Right. But anyway, this game's actually evened out. So the early game for Faceless looked really, really bad, and they managed to salvage it pretty nicely. They're starting to find the farm. Sark got involved in a couple of fights that he could, so Black is back into this. He's still a bit behind the other cores, but it's within reach now.
It's just that both teams have kind of their net worth a little differently distributed. You look towards TNC as these three cores very much at the top, but over on the side of Faceless, in terms of specifically the support capacity, this Abaddon looking a lot bigger than either of the two supports that TNC have at this stage.
Yes.
Splitting up the resources a little differently on Faceless' side. And what's the Abaddon X going to be able to pick up with that way? The completed mech and him himself also looking for the medallion. So definitely, considering the way that TNC play, the fact that they have these two picks on XY, it could make the difference in these team fights.
Absolutely, it's one of the issues that you can run into when you run a support duo like Ogre Venge, is that neither hero really... I mean, Venge can farm if you play it that way. I just don't think that's the way Ryo plays for TNC. And the playmaker in Tim's is playing Ogre. Ogre doesn't farm. He makes everyone else farm. So, as a result, those two supports are definitely falling pretty far behind, and that puts a lot more pressure on TNC's cores. If there's missteps in the fights from the cores, it's way more costly when the supports can't really compensate for you. Whereas you look over to Faceless, like you mentioned, the Abaddon can have a big impact, relatively.
Top lane at the moment, Faceless deciding to simply avoid this sort of pressure. It will be a free tier 2, almost certainly for TNC, as they power in on the top. Faceless actually looking for a bit of a trade in terms of pushing. They have a couple of heroes that managed to move the mid lane to creep wave right back to the tier 2 of TNC, and bottom lane they will end up claiming, so they get themselves to trade Faceless.
I think Faceless are happy with trading towers just because they open up the map. Opening it up on both sides will probably in this game favor them a bit more, since they have the catch of both Sark and Nyx. So if they can open up so they can push the lanes split and force TNC back, that's when they get the opportunity to find these pickoffs that their lineup wants to play for, but hasn't really been able to for 25 minutes so far.
Adios.
Cuckoo with the Defiance Sure. It's a little trickier for some of these essential counter picks to burst them down. The Nyx Assassin in particular. Mana burn can certainly pack a punch if you are lacking magic resist. Sure. It's a little trickier for some of these essential counter picks to burst them down.
Picked up by OD.
Do you think it's a little trickier for some of these essential if you are lacking magic resist?
He can at least log one mana burn with the barrier.
Is it just, I mean, why would he say
that's the question. It's a bit unusual here. I think BCB actually has really high balance, but maybe he felt like he needed something temporarily, and he's slotting down on D.
that sort of play.
Yeah, they actually have nothing on their lineup at all.
Yeah. Again, it's another situation where the Slark has been picked, and TNC went with the idea of having this high pressure that they can try and push into him before he gets to a certain point. When he does get to this point that arguably Black has, the lockdown again, it's not there. Where's your catch for the Slark?
It's still.
I mean, you've got, as you said earlier, you've got a lot of ways to get the target that Slark's going on away from, make it very hard for Black to finish off the job with an instant jump in. And I guess that's what you've got to abuse to just try and prolong the fight so that his spells are used and suddenly you can hit back at him. But it's still tricky to jump in and take the Slark out of the fight immediately.
You can pretty quickly force him to use Shadow.
My name is Patrick Burgle, and my great